In the summer of 1998, under the grey skies of Manchester and within the crumbling remnants of the city's industrial past, a young woman vanished into silence. Her name was Julie Jones, a 32-year-old mother of two and whose life had been shaped by hardship, addiction and survival. By day she was a daughter and a mother. By night she occasionally worked the city streets, battling a heroin dependency that had gripped her for years. On the 27th of June, and after Julia got herself ready to go out for a couple of hours that evening, she left her home at Ancoats Close and not too far from the red light district in Manchester. We don't know who she met, where she met these people. We know she was last seen on Minchell Street in the heart of Manchester, but for decades her murder has remained a complete mystery, and it's one of the darkest episodes in the history of Manchester. As the hours passed by and when she never returned home, her housemate became concerned. She reported Julie missing, but in a city plagued by vice, addiction and stretched police resources, missing sex workers were too often written off until something turned up. And something did eventually turn up. It was 6 days later and on the 3rd of July when a woman who was walking her dog close by the old Smithfield Market in Manchester, she made a gruesome discovery. Her dog stopped to sniff at what looked like an old, tatty carpet. But this carpet had been wrapped tightly around what looked like a human form. And it was only on closer inspection that the true horrifying details would emerge. Wrapped tightly inside this carpet was Julie. Her naked, cold and lifeless body had been discarded as though it was rubbish. The police would later believe Julie may have been killed elsewhere and her body placed where it would later be discovered. But this scene was truly horrific. It was chilling. Julie's body had been hidden in some deep bushes in an area known locally for the sex workers. But it was also littered with discarded needles, broken furniture, and obviously now a corpse. Pathologists quickly carried out tests in a bid to establish what kind of weapon had been used by the killer, and a post-mortem would reveal the horror in full. Julie had suffered catastrophic crush injuries. Her ribs were shattered and her internal organs severely damaged. Pathologists compared the trauma to being hit by a vehicle or falling from a significant height, but there were no impact marks from a car and no indication from a fall. It was brutal, deliberate, but more alarmingly, it was calculated. The police certainly cordoned off the area and they searched the grounds for Julie's missing clothes. They were never discovered, and neither was any jewellery that Julie may have been wearing that evening. She was found completely naked. She had been discarded like trash. But how long her body had been in that location for is anybody's guess. The investigation began extremely quickly, but time was already against the police. There was no CCTV footage in that area. There were barely any witnesses, only the couple of sex workers who said they saw Julie in the early hours and obviously before she went missing. So time was against the police. Like I said, there was nothing to follow like a pattern or follow Julie from one area of Manchester to another. There were no cameras. But yet the world would still revolve and life would go on as normal, and especially for the sex workers in and around Manchester. For Teresa Hume, Julie's mother, the news was crushing. Julie had been troubled, having been a heroin addict for at least 14 years, and she also worked as a prostitute to pay for her habit. Now, whilst she may have had regular clients, she would also on occasion work the streets. But Julie's life wasn't always one of turmoil. And as a child growing up in Wales, she was academic, a keen netball player, and enjoyed singing, dancing, as well as attending Sunday school. However, and by the age of 28, Julie's life had spiralled out of control. Her mother, Teresa, later went on to say that she had simply gotten in with the bad crowd, or the wrong crowd. And this crowd, it was them who led her astray and into drugs. But Julie, she was much loved by her family. She had two young sons, Dale, who was 12 years old, and Josh, who was just 18 months old. But these two young boys, they now faced a life without their mother. And despite what many may think of Julie's lifestyle, she would always return home within a couple of hours of leaving, as she couldn't bear to be away from her sons. But on this occasion, she never returned home. After the death of Julie, Teresa took on the role of being the parent for her daughter's own sons. And for decades, she fought a long, hard battle, not just to raise Julie's children in the right way, but also to fight for justice and to find the killer or killers of her daughter, Julie. Greater Manchester Police, and despite revisiting the case multiple times, they have never been able to charge anyone. Leads dried up, witnesses moved on. The world once again forgot Julie. BBC television even did a short segment on the murder of Julie Jones. They did a couple of reconstructions and they showed the location, obviously, where Julie's body would be discovered. But again, despite obviously the police speaking during that segment and pleading with the public for any information they may have, no matter how small they may feel it was, nobody ever came forward with any tangible names. But there was one name that would often be mentioned, and that was the name of Christopher Halliwell. Christopher Halliwell, well, he was a taxi driver from Swindon, and he was convicted in 2012 of murdering two women, both sex workers. Some believe Halliwell may be linked to other unsolved crimes, obviously including Julie's, but Greater Manchester Police have stated there is no direct evidence connected him to her death. With the police leads seemingly becoming extremely thin on the ground, and with hardly any names being brought to the table in relation to the murder of Julie, it kind of feels like the world began to slowly forget about Julie Jones. But one person who certainly would never forget was that of her mother, Teresa. And every year after obviously the death of her daughter, each anniversary, Teresa and the rest of her family made this short pilgrimage to the area where Julie's body was discovered. And it was a kind of solace. It was a kind of, in a morbid, macabre way, it was a place where I kind of think Teresa felt the comfort, most comfort, because that is where her daughter would be discovered, or was discovered. Obviously, everybody acts differently in situations such as this. And Teresa, she felt it was more respectful to visit that location to place these flowers. But all that changed round about 2003. And the area itself was redeveloped and flats were erected. And on one occasion, Teresa arrived with her family to find it all segregated. It was all cordoned off, workmen with her. And from what we've read, we believe that one of the workers, one of the workmen there, actually took the flowers from Teresa and her family, and he said he would place them down. Now, obviously, this upset the family quite a lot because, like I said, it was their one place of solace, and they could no longer visit that exact location. Now, apparently, some commemorative plaque was supposed to have been erected, or there was talk of erecting a plaque close to or above the area where Julie's body was discovered. We've researched, we've looked online, we've tried reaching out to people, we've had nothing back. We can't find anything regarding the plaque to commemorate Julie's life. So we don't think that actually ever happened, as sad as that is. So just behind these large grey gates at the former old Smithfield Market is where the grim discovery of Julie's body was made back in July 1998. It's hard to know exactly where her discovery was made, but we believe it was just slightly in front of us and roughly where those green bushes are, but to the left-hand side of this wall, directly in front of us. But we can't gain access inside simply because it's gated and there is a keypad combination to open the gates. We know Julie's body was found somewhere behind that wall, simply based on the skyscrapers just behind it, and we'll put an arrow over now. But there is an old newspaper article showing the police just outside and them skyscraper, or one of those skyscrapers in the background. So we know, like I said, Julie was behind that building. We can also reference that strange looking rooftop just above the old market itself, because that was used in a lot of photographs and obviously the reconstruction on Crime Watch. So we know that that building just at the top, that rooftop, was directly opposite where Julie's body was discovered. As I just mentioned, it's hard to know for sure where the body of Julie was discovered. We think it is where these grey new builds, these flats currently are. We think it was just behind there on that land. But as you can see, it's all been redeveloped over the years since that tragic discovery. Now, not being able to visit the location and obviously to place flowers each and every year in memory of her daughter, Teresa described the experience as losing her all over again. And she went on to say that, "I didn't even see my daughter's body. And according to police, it had lain there for a week before being found. It was badly decomposed. Every time I went to see her, her body was covered over. Every year we go to Old Smithfield Market to pay our respects. We have her grave in Bury, but the place where she was found is somewhere all the family gathers to be together for her." Teresa was, well, she was angered by obviously what she was seeing. And she also went on to ask where the justice was. Where was the justice for Julie? Where was the justice for her two sons, Dale and Josh? She was somebody, and Teresa went on to say, "She was my daughter." It was on the 26th of October, some 4 months after the discovery of Julie's body, that she will be interred within the grounds of Bury Cemetery. And it was after a requiem mass that had taken place at around 9:30 that morning. And it was around 10:30 when the funeral cortege made it here to Bury Cemetery where that interment would take place. So we have managed to locate the final resting place of Julie Jones. And the one thing that really hit us when we got here was noticing her mother's name on this headstone, Teresa Hume, a much loved mother, sister and nan. And she sadly died on the 19th of November 2021, aged 81 years. And as Vicky pointed out, straight away Vicky spotted it, and it seems that she outlived both her daughters, not just Julie, but also Angela Jones. So Teresa, she never actually got closure, did she? She never actually found out who the murderer of her daughter actually was. And she campaigned for years after the murder for justice and for people to come forward, which obviously they never did. But we were saddened to see Teresa's name here on the headstone. We actually looked online this last week for more information on Teresa to see if she maybe was still alive and fighting the fight, trying to get justice. And now we know why those leads suddenly dried out, and it's because she sadly passed away in 2021. Such a shame. In 2018, Greater Manchester Police announced a £50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Julie's killer. This was part of a renewed appeal to the public made 20 years after her death, as police and Julie's family continued to hope that somebody who knew the truth may finally come forward. Teresa and her family, they welcomed this exciting news. They believe that this £50,000 reward may well prove to be the breakthrough that the family wished for, needed, wanted. Now, interestingly, there are many newspaper snippets out there when Teresa herself was still alive, and she had told reporters that she believed she knew who the killer of her daughter actually was, but she never named him publicly, or her publicly, simply because she didn't have enough proof. And obviously, naming somebody for a murder is a serious allegation. I think she may well have told the police her suspicions, but nothing ever came of this. So that is a fascinating insight into, obviously, Teresa and what she was going through. She believed she knew who the person responsible was, but there simply was never any evidence, no proof, no nothing. Now, Julie was not alone in what happened to her. And from reading many articles similar to this, several women went missing during the mid to late 90s in Manchester and the surrounding areas. At least one, if not two women, their bodies were discovered, as in the case of Julie. Some were badly mutilated, some were strangled, some were left in derelict buildings, some were left on derelict land. But in many of these cases, the person or persons responsible were never found. Nobody was ever charged. And there's also another disturbing case, and that is the story of Helen Sage. And she disappeared in August 1997. Her body was never discovered. She simply went missing. She was a sex worker. She was 10 years younger than Julie herself. But both Julie and Helen looked extremely similar. They had curly ginger hair. They both had young children. Like I said, they both worked on the streets. They both also worked the same street, Minshall Street in Manchester. But yet, Helen and her case has never been solved. Her body has never been discovered. To many people, it appears that they always felt that the person responsible for Julie's death was somebody local, somebody who knew the area extremely well back in 1998. Some people also believe that Julie knew her murderer. So obviously this led to speculation that it may well have been a regular client. We know that Julie had regular clients and she occasionally worked the streets, maybe once or twice a week. But this speculation would only increase throughout the years, and especially as nobody was ever charged with the murder of Julie Jones. Now obviously, in the years that have since passed, technology has improved immensely, and a lot of people watching this video are going to be wondering, has DNA ever helped solve this case? Well, unfortunately, no is the answer. Despite the police still having evidence, skin cells, they may well have blood types. We don't know what evidence they may have, but evidence they do have. The police have come out and said that obviously this is a cold case that has remained opened. And should any DNA match anybody's profile on the DNA database, then obviously that person will be of interest. But as of today, August 2025, like I said, nobody has ever been charged with the murder of Julie Jones. And what makes this story even more sad is that it's both shocking and deeply unsettling to consider that within just 3 days of Julie Jones's battered body being discovered, her colleagues were already back out on the streets touting for business in the very same area where she was last seen alive. Now, the sheer speed in which life apparently resumed and went back to normal is quite frightening, and it shows the enormous strain that these young and old ladies were encountering and still encounter to this very day. These women are on the streets for a reason. They don't do it out of a lifestyle choice just because it's easy. They do it because of necessity. Some of these ladies rely on drugs. It's a habit they can't get out of. Now, I'm not here, Vicky's not here to dehumanise these people. These are still human beings at the end of the day. And for whatever reason, they've found themselves using prostitution as a means to get by. Like I said, I'm not here to criticise them. We're not here to dehumanise them, as I've said twice already in this video. We're here to make people remember that these are still women. These are still human beings who are trying to get by as best as they can in life. Now, we have to take Julie's lifestyle out of the equation and strip away the assumptions, the labels and the judgments. But what remains is a mother raw with grief, clinging to fading memories and unanswered questions. And for Teresa, this isn't about reputations or past choices. This is about justice for a daughter brutally taken, a life cut short with no closure. Each passing day was another spent in anguish, desperately hoping someone somewhere will speak the truth, and that the person responsible will finally be held accountable. So today's story isn't one just about murder. It is also one about the grief, the fight for justice, and an unwavering belief, like I said, that justice will be served. But for Teresa, that justice was never served. And when we came here to Bury Cemetery and we found the final resting place of Julie, we were saddened and we were touched to see that Teresa herself has sadly passed away, and she never got the closure that she fought so hardly for all those years. And it really is a sad outcome to what was already a terrible crime. This is Minshall Street in Manchester, and it is here where Julie Jones was last seen alive by many of her work colleagues, and it was at around 1:30 on the 28th of June when that last reported sighting was made. And like I said, it was somewhere along this stretch of road here. So that is all from here in Manchester, and we hope you found this story fascinating. Like I said, and please remember how you comment to this video if you so wish to comment. We know, obviously, a lot of people who look down upon the sex workers, the sex industry, but as I've touched upon many times in this video, a lot of these ladies do so out of necessity. Not because they want to, but because it's their only means of earning money. So please just be a bit mindful of how you react to some of the elements of today's story. But if you found it interesting, if you have found it fascinating, don't forget to, like I say, leave your comments, tell us your thoughts. Have you heard the story of Julie Jones before? I kind of feel it is a relatively unknown story. A couple of people have spoken about it here on YouTube before, but otherwise it is kindly resigned to the history books. A lot of people seemingly have forgotten about this tale or never heard of it before. But if you have found it interesting, please don't forget to comment. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to give us a big thumbs up. And if you can share the video, it does help myself and Vicky, and it does help the channel grow and the community then grows. But in the meantime, guys, as we leave Manchester behind us, please stay safe, stay curious, and we will be back soon with more tales from a dark, but at times it can be a glorious past.